I've had cause to become familiar with some number of dysfunctional behaviors of mind. We may call it abnormal psychology. I've been reminded quite forcefully recently of the borderline personality, characterized by a pervasive instability of self-image, of affect, emotion, of relationships. In other words, the self doesn't interact well with either the inner or the outer world. Reasoning tends to be emotional. Judgments tend to be black or white, kind of like me. Self Self-injury is common, and self-destruction is not infrequent. Somewhere between 2 and 15% of a typical population may display such behaviors. Perhaps 20% of all psychiatric hospitalizations are due to this diagnosis, not a small or a rare problem then. So what? So is it possible that cultures or religions might suffer such an affliction? I cannot say what Islam is. I do not know its existential reality. I don't concern myself with the arcana of its doctrine. I don't care about its times of quiescence. The hibernating bear is of only academic interest. Jackals, hyenas. I know only what it shows itself to be when it's in its manic phase. Alas, we are, none of us, judged by our finest moments. Praised perhaps, but not judged. We are judged, and rightly, for our failures. How then shall we judge Islam? Well, how many dark ages is a religion allowed? What is its effect in the world currently? The question is mere rhetoric. Of the several dozen wars currently going on in the world at this moment, are there any where one of the opposing sides is not Muslim? Some time ago I did the calculations, statistics. There's a 50-50 chance that for any given terrorist event, the perpetrator's name will somewhere include a version of Mohammed. Here's the problem. There needs to be a difference between what is offensive and what is incendiary. Right now, it's all about hatred of Jews and of Israel. Of course, that's always been the case, but it's acute now, like explosive diarrhea. But it's also always been the compulsion to murder. Two groups love murder: movie makers and Islamists. For Islamists, there is no offense that is not incendiary. And that is a very troublesome problem indeed, because we in the West not only make the distinction, but we rely on it. I have no problem with people having other ways. It's not mores that are the problem. It's murder. Real tolerance is what defines us, describes the foundation of our culture. If I am vulgar enough, someone may have to have a word with me, or some big dude may give me the whooping I would so richly deserve. Alas, for him, the law does not recognize the concept of fighting words. A jury may certainly acquit him, and perhaps rightly, but that's just another beauty of our system, where law is balanced by justice and common sense. We tolerate ambiguity. However, with Islam, as it presents itself in the streets, my intemperate speech requires a whooping, well, a stoning, a burning, a bombing, a beheading. If I were sufficiently known, some of the things that I have said and written would earn me a fatwa, a death sentence. I think I seem to be a pretty reasonable guy, maybe too opinionated, maybe too sure of myself, but more concerned about being right than about sounding right. And even if I'm just utterly wrong, even if I'm insensitive or downright offensive, even the ACLU would theoretically defend me. Laugh out loud. Point being, the marketplace of ideas has been such a central idea to us. It is the plaza, the agora of our polis. Our cities are centered around the marketplace of ideas. The bazaars of Islam, sad to say, have no offerings, no wares of freedom. What do they have? In the late 1850s, a rumor swept through Bengal and then across Greater India that the cartridges used by Indian soldiers under the Raj were greased with both cow and pig fat. I sigh, I shake my head, and point out that the cow is sacred to the Hindus and the pig is anathema to Muslims, and cartridges were held in the mouth. Yuck. So of course, the Sepoy mutiny lasted for several years. Bloody, 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 bloody. Key concept? Rumor. Rumor, rumor. Perhaps it was true, but it wasn't. But rumor. The circumstances, the details are different today, but the attitude is the same. Hear a rumor? Kill. Rigidity and the inability to achieve a perspective that is not formed solely by dogma. Reasoning is emotional. Judgments are black and white. Self-injury is inevitable. And suicide is a sacrament. Remember all that stuff about borderline personalities? Islam, I'm vulgar enough to observe, originated as a lunar cult, attested still in its symbol, the crescent. Allah, Al-Ilah, the God, was Muhammad's local and dominant moon god, Sin, made grand. Al-Ilah has 3 daughters, Al-Uzza, Al-Lat, and Manat. These 3 are acknowledged in the Quran in the so-called satanic verses, which were expurgated, cut out, and repented of by Muhammad. He was, you see, quote, tempted of Satan, unquote, to write them. But I digress. The moon is a universal symbol for the irrational, from folklore to Golden Dawn to Jungian psychology. It may be mere wordplay for me to require a genetic relationship between its occult lunar past and modern, current Islam. But the fragility of Muslim character, that at any hint of rumor must rush en masse into the street and rant and riot and burn, it makes that case far more forcefully than any words I could string together. Case for irrationality. We are not better. The mass psychosis of trans children and climate hysteria and reverse super racism, we're not better. We're just not quite as extreme. It hasn't come to outright murder yet. There is, in astronomy, the phenomenon of the terminator, that line on a celestial body that divides day and night, the eternal gloaming that rings a globe. Likewise, the borderline personality forever hovers in the perpetual twilight between the merely neurotic and psychosis. And it is not inapt, I think, to notice that Islam, lunar crescent moon Islam, as it manifests itself through its public actions, its current celebrations of hatred, this Islam finds its most characteristic expression in the shadowland of irrationality, oppression, violence, destruction, murder, terror, atrocity. The required perspective to see this, however, can only be achieved at a very great distance, and dogma bears no wings. What? What then? What hope? I turn to grand old Milton, on a par with Shakespeare, writing of blinded Samson in his Palestinian agony. Quote, "O dark, 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 amid the blaze of noon, irrecoverably dark, total eclipse, without all hope of day." Samson, mighty Israelite, tortured, despairing. Every poet writes on themes that move him, that speak to his soul, and compel his soul to speak. We do not know with what tears these words of Milton were written. We know they would have come from blind eyes, that Milton, the incomparable Milton, shared this affliction of blindness with mighty Samson. What we can know is this: to speak of what might have been could flood the world with tears. Islam could and might have turned from darkness to light, but prophets of hate have turned that flock into the dark wilderness, and they would make a wilderness of the whole world. Well might we weep, but we must, keep our powder dry, because they are coming. We've seen it from Gaza, where Samson was tormented, and these Philistines bring darkness with them, and they carry long knives. They enjoy killing, and they want to die. I suppose that answers the question. Some large statistical number of Islamic adherents has crossed over the Terminator into utter darkness, madness, and has made itself psychotic.